Hey Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you're listening from. How you doing? Matt Phillips here from One Chat Live. I don't know how much you can hear the pool activity outside. I needed someone air conditioning, so it's the best I could get. I hope that you can hear me and it's not just a muffled pool DJ. But anyway, how's it going? Where are we? First of all, hats off to, where are we? 11th of August. Hats off to people doing the Runaday Day Challenge, August the 11th. Well done. How are you feeling? You might, if you're an intermediate runner in particular, you might now, following my advice, have made a few changes to the intensity you're doing during the days, and might be finding it a little bit easier. A few people I know during challenges, intermediate runners just set off too quickly, and they try to do 5 park runs like they normally would if they're doing a 5k, and you can't do that if you're going to do it cumulatively and you're only used to 3 or 4 days a week running. So hopefully the advice I gave of just going slower than you normally do, of setting yourself a month's goal, maybe plotting it out if you're an intermediate runner, plan the month and plan your paces accordingly. And as always, I mean, there are exceptions, but generally I suggest looking at the intensity of those runs, and during the 7 days, for example, 4 blocks of 7, then make sure that 80% of your running is in a 3 or 4 level of exertion, okay, where 10 is a sprint and 1 is practically nothing. So, yeah, where am I? I've had 3 days ago, first thing in the morning, just before breakfast, I think, had a little swim, as you do on holiday. One of my kids on my back, who loves going underwater with me, so I'm underwater kicking breaststroke, and then coming up, kind of going up and down, with the kid hanging onto my neck, and underneath, kicked breaststroke and felt. Again, it's useful when you get injured because you understand the terminology that a patient will use with you. I can only call it a twang, and even the word sounds horrible, doesn't it? And in my mind, you know, the sensation is translated using the words that the brain has, using your vocabulary. So the translation of that twang feeling is like, imagine you've got one of those luggage cords wrapped around a suitcase, and then suddenly the little clips at the end come undone, those little hooks, and the cord springs back. Okay, so that's the sensation which you have, and thinking it of like a rubber band being cut or a bungee cord being cut, it makes it hurt more, doesn't it? Because it's a horrible idea that something solid and fleshy inside your leg has actually torn, which is the other word we'll use. And again, it's interesting when you do suffer something like this, it puts yourself into the perspective of the patient. Some of you might be following, if you're therapists, you're probably following Adam Meakins with his current deadlifting exercise accident. Yeah, the guy's in a lot of pain, obviously. I think recently he did a night pain one where he's waking up 4 or 5 times a night. And it's an interesting video to follow because it highlights, again, when you're a therapist and you injure yourself, and a modern thinking therapist like Adam, it's really interesting because you're aware of the biopsychosocial model. You're aware that your fears and beliefs and things you've read and your past experiences will affect how much pain is output, and indeed whether pain is output, regardless of the extent of tissue damage, which is, it's fascinating when you're doing it yourself. And in these recordings that Adam's doing, he is again talking to himself, telling himself to relax, not to catastrophize, not to worry, that he hasn't done anything that seriously. All the tests he's done suggest that there's nothing seriously, mechanically or structurally wrong with him to the extent that you need to go to A&E or you need to get medical intervention, serious medical intervention of some form. But it doesn't help so much when you're telling yourself. This is where being a human kind of changes everything, because we do like somebody else telling us that things are going to be okay. It sounds much more powerful, especially if it's a person with knowledge, a person who we respect. We know this because of the data showing people wearing white coats and stuff, you know, beliefs and following commands, and lots and lots of data shows that if someone's in authority, we tend to believe them and follow what they say in theory. So anyway, so yeah, I had this in the pool straight away on holiday, doing my run a day, up to day 137 or something, I can't remember where I'm at the moment, and thinking, oh no, this doesn't feel good. So kids off my back, and I'm just staying in the pool for a sec, just kind of testing in the water. Obviously it was my adductor, it was on the inside of the thigh, so there's kind of muscles down the inside of the leg, 3 of them adductor. There's a short one called the brevis and a long one called the longus, and there's a magnus, which kind of is the biggest one. It kind of goes more behind, posterior. And I was testing in the water, just poking it a little bit in terms of movements, just to see, to try and get some movement straight away, so that I already in leaving the pool felt positive. And to tell you the truth, it was in the water and moving it, I could tell pretty much the extent of the injury at that time. It was hurting when I was obviously adducting the leg, which is moving the leg inwards against the resistance of water. That was hurting, that was pushing it up to kind of a 7. Trying to stretch it, wasn't very happy either, so the muscle had gone into spasm. It felt like the longest because it was going down to quite long down the inside of my thigh, just before the inside of the knee. And looking at the mechanics of doing the breaststroke, especially first in the morning, I wasn't warmed up at all. I had a kid on the back, I'm having great fun, and bam, I've just kind of torn some muscle fibres. There's that word again, torn, sounds horrible. So anyway, got out, limping, breakfast, and then the whole day of, oh my God, what have I done to myself? And to tell you the truth, during the day, it showed itself as I was no longer able to, imagine you're lying down on a sunbed, and you've got one leg over the side, and then you try and lift that leg up to put it next to your okay leg. Couldn't do that, so I was having to lift my leg up using my arms to get it onto the sunbed. Yeah, pretty unhappy, but then thinking, look, I need to start loading this. I need to start kind of, let's put it, making sure that the brain doesn't get too protective, doing things, using those muscles, doing movements that I can to kind of get as much through that checklist as possible. So that's kind of logged and stored. Oh, you can do this. Oh, you can lift your leg up if you use your arms to help you. Oh, you can hold your leg in the air, or you can lower it down slowly. Or this is what rehab's kind of all about in a lot of cases. You're going through a list and ticking off as many things as possible that you can do, and getting it as many ticks as you can, making it a little bit harder each time. And by doing that, you're stopping your nervous system from just locking down and outputting pain for any movement at all, which involves that muscle, indeed the other leg. So yeah, that's what I was doing. There was no question I was going to run on it that day. It needs to be rested. But even when I was in the pool, thinking that cold would be helping rather than just lying in the sun, I was still doing gentle water movements. So imagine you're in the water, closing your leg towards the other one, lifting it up, and then adducting it with a D against resistance. And that was giving me that kind of, in the water it was only about a 4 or 5 out of 10 pain, which was okay. You can work with 4 to 5s normally. Obviously get medical advice if you're not sure, but when you get something like this, doing things which cause a 3 or 4 out of 10 pain can, and it's not always, but can be okay. And in this case, a muscle strain on the inside of the leg, it was okay. So I was doing that consciously, not too much, but just consciously doing it. I was, to tell you the truth, the thing which probably hurt most of all was the hip flexion. That's because the adductors do assist in hip flexion. So lifting your leg up, that's why I couldn't lift the leg up and adduct it across to the other one, onto the sunbed, onto a bed. The other thing I noted when I was lying down was dropping my leg down to the side, which is abduction with a B. That was impossible. That was like a no-no. That was a scream of pain. So what I was doing was holding my leg on the outside with my hand and then gently lowering that knee down, but not letting it fall, but guiding it with my hands to take the weight of my leg off. And again, just playing around with letting my body experience the lengthening of that muscle, but without giving it a load which was too much. So I managed to take that load or reduce that load by supporting the leg and gently allowing that leg to open, which is stretching the muscle that had been injured, but supporting it, which meant I was lengthening the muscle and allowing my nervous system to experience that lengthening without feeling too threatened. So I was doing quite a lot of that during the night as well, because it took me a while to get to sleep. In terms of going to sleep, pillow between the legs, because that's just a comfortable position all over, keeps the legs, stop me from dropping that leg over or opening up too much. It was just kind of gripping that pillow, which was nice and comfortable. Excuse me, just got to need some water. And again, just trying to be positive. Every time I managed to do a little bit more in terms of the rehab, then it was kind of celebration. And thinking, let's see how it is in the morning. Wake up in the morning, this was yesterday, and feels better to the extent that I did a 5k just to keep the Runaday up. I did a 5k walk, okay, which took an hour, just under an hour, and was playing around with different movement then. Okay, when you're walking and running, I tried one running, kind of a few steps, and it didn't want to know. There was no way. It was like turned into hopping. But walking, so the thing was with running and walking, the adductors. When you walk, you're not just marching straight forwards and backwards. There's movement in and there's movement out. As you're de-accelerating, the leg's coming in. As you're accelerating, and the leg is moving out to the side using the hip muscles. So what I found with walking was if I swung the leg around a little bit rather than just straight forwards, then the pain just went straight away. So I was doing a little bit of that. And again, what I'm doing is getting my brain used to the walking mechanism. And just adjusting it a little bit. It's a symptom modification. I'm just walking in a slightly different gait so my brain can experience that moving forwards, vertical and contralateral movement of the arms and legs, and not feel threatened. So I did a 5k basically practicing some of that with, some of that without, making sure that as much as possible I wasn't doing anything which would cause the nervous system to let out a pain of kind of more than 7 or 8. Now and again I would touch 6s and then go back to my swinging the leg around. So there was about an hour of that, but to tell you the truth, it was a lovely day. I'm looking at lovely things. I mean, my external environment was fantastic. I'm on holiday, so I know that I haven't got to go to work. I haven't got any events or races coming up. So, and it's all, it's all nice. So I was lucky in that sense, and I slept pretty well and eaten well. So did my 5k, and then for the rest of the day just continued, particularly in the pool with the resistance against water, just getting that opening and closing of the leg, hip extension. Looked like I was doing my own little aqua aerobics kind of session, and that was yesterday. And to tell you the truth, towards the evening it was kind of feeling okay. I was walking around the complex and forgetting. I was like, oh, I haven't felt my adductor for a while, which is lovely, which is a great sign, because suddenly you're not consciously having to move anything or change anything. It's just now your nervous system is just not threatened by that movement so much. So I was pretty confident last night. In fact, I think I even tried a few little runs up and down the corridor with the kids just to test it, and it was feeling okay, which meant that today, yesterday, I tell a lie, yesterday as well, I was swimming as well. We got a pedalo and I was jumping out of the boat to get the kids as they came down the slide, and I'm pushing the boat along and hanging onto the boat doing breaststroke, and that was lovely in the water. So I was actually doing I was actually doing the same movement as when the injury happened, which is always a good sign. If you can replicate the movement of when you were doing the injury, and the nervous system lets you do it, it doesn't feel threatened, that's kind of end stage rehab, pretty much. In fact, what you want to do is take it to something more strenuous than the movement. So really I should get 2 kids on the back of my neck and then dip down and do some breaststroke underwater, which I don't think I've done yet, but will do now. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, by yesterday I was running, doing some test runs just inside the hotel, and so today I realised, yeah, it's fine, I'm going to be able to run today, that's going to be good. And I did run, and it was started off on like a 3 or 4 out of 10. Again, running is part of the rehab, even though it wasn't a running related injury. Running does use a lot of adduction in the stabilisation of that leg when it lands, decelerates and accelerates again. It's shortening under strain, under load, and also lengthening under load. So yeah, my system was definitely sending out a little bit of an alarm there. But again, you don't expect to have no pain when you rehab something. It's okay, and this is where pain and understanding of pain and pain science helps both therapists who are giving advice and also patients or clients as well. If you're rehabbing properly, you'd even expect a little bit of pain because it shows you're poking, as Greg Lehman would say, poking the bear enough to actually make an adaptation in the body. You've got to poke it a little bit, you just mustn't punch it in the face. So yeah, and to tell you the truth, once I'd done a couple of miles at just a relaxed pace in the sun, it kind of went to like a 1 or something. It felt a little bit kind of numbed, and it was great, it was okay. I wasn't running fast, it was easier downhill, that took the load off the adductor. Uphill was a little bit, maybe shouted a little bit more, up to 2 maybe sometimes, but that was just because of probably just getting a little bit more out of breath. So obviously if you challenge yourself more, then the system gets more sensitized. But yeah, did a happy just over 4.5 miles or something, which was fine for today. And yeah, happy. And so yeah, so I hope I haven't bored the pants of you, but that's kind of shows you how I went from 3 days ago unable to lift my leg from the floor onto a bed. Okay, like unable, like it just wasn't going to know. There was shut down, mixture of pain and just lack of movement. It just wasn't going to happen. I was having to lift my leg up like a rag doll to get it on the bed, and that was in a lot of pain, like wincing, like kids leave me alone for a sec. I've gone from that to doing 4.5 miles today with the pain on like maximum 1 out of 10. And to tell you the truth, I'm not even aware of it now. Sitting down, I haven't stood up for a while, but now, was it always going to do that, or was it the kind of stuff I've been doing during the 3 days? Well, you never know, it's impossible to say. I'd need 2 of me in exactly the same scenario, not knowing what the trial was going on, and for both of us to actually do, one of us to do the things I've done, one of us not to. So you never know, but that's the sort of rehab which generally, once they've assessed somebody with an injury, we kind of guide them through. Okay, so from the first moment, you try and load appropriately. You try and tick that, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Oh, I can nearly do this, fine. I'm going to keep doing this, I can nearly do this without provoking too much pain, so that I've got that in the bank, I don't lose it. Okay, I don't just stick my feet up and avoid it completely. Make sense? And then basically you just use pain as your ally, as your guide. Pain is letting you know how much you can get away with, whilst making sure that all the external factors which could increase pain, like worrying, reading, googling, all of these things which can stress you out even more, you need to avoid. You need to stay positive, sensible, yes, I did a lot of that, gradually increasing the load, and yeah, eating well, sleeping well. Obviously I'm on holiday, so I'm not having to work or get, well, no, that's a lie. With holiday with kids, you do get stressed out. It is hard, so I'm not going to say stress wasn't there at all, but yeah. And today I'm back running again, and it's just a little niggle, which is fine. Assessing it as it wasn't a tendon, it's nothing like that. If it's a tendon, then it's a slightly different situation, maybe, because you then got to see whether it hurts after the run. But I know it's not a tendon injury going on here, just because of the way it's the whole length of the inner thigh. It's a muscular issue, so I'm not thinking tomorrow morning I'm going to not be able to walk. If anything, tomorrow I should feel even better because I've been running on it. Right, there you go, people. There's the chat. It was a bit long-winded. I don't know how long that's been, but I just wanted to give you an idea of that's the sort of protocol really which we go through, and it's just testimony to, not always, but in most cases, or a lot of cases, how robust the human body is, and how just because you can't lift a leg up one day doesn't mean in 3 days you won't be practically back to normal again. Pain and lack of movement and fatigue is all a form of defense. Okay, it's there to help us, it's our ally, Okay, you've got to be careful who you say that to, particularly someone with persistent pain, because telling someone with persistent pain that pain is their ally is probably not a very good idea. But understanding that pain is not necessarily the enemy, okay, that it's part of our system. It is a part of the system. It's the most successful form of defense we have in our body. The trouble is it can go wrong. Sometimes they're not even quite sure, but sometimes these persistent pain issues can be that something is not quite working as efficiently as it's supposed to be with the output of pain, with that defense system, that alarm system. But anyway, hope that's been a useful story for some of you. It's not as easy as it sounds, okay? I'm not being big-headed, but I can listen to my body. I've done this a long time. I think I'm pretty good at taking myself to where I need to get to without overdoing it. It's very tricky unless you've got that experience to know how far to push yourself, whether to do something or not, whether to stop, whether to keep going. It's a tricky thing. And even that's the job of a therapist, to try and guide you and to give you ideas. But ultimately, recovering is about you doing these things, and the therapist giving you advice and supporting you. And it is an advice. That was an interesting conversation I had. I think it was interesting. I think it was a bit boring in the end. But there's this thing going around, this social media thing, saying, oh, the human soul doesn't want advice or being fixed. It does need advice. Advice is something where, imagine if you went to someone because you had an injury or pain and they gave you no advice. They just listened and talked to you. Advice is a professional helping somebody else because they got more knowledge. So yeah, I don't know why I mentioned that, but yeah, but giving your advice to yourself is tricky unless you've got the experience and the knowledge. So this is why you should call an online consultation or something with a professional. Can make a load of difference because they can listen, you can chat things out, and they can give you a plan using yourself, self-managing yourself, give you some advice on what to do. It can make all the difference. Right, that's it. Just having a little look through the comments here. Hey Rachel, how you doing? Rachel Scott, hope you're well. Rachel says, I ran with glute pain soreness from weightlifting and it felt immediately better after the run was complete. Yeah, so there's so many different types of pain, isn't there? There's soreness, again, from post-exercise soreness, DOMS, sometimes using the body in a slightly different way and just showing the nervous system that I'm not broken, I can do this, and the pain will go. So it's a fascinating one. Hope you're well, Rachel, thanks for that comment. Right, so Runaday people, keep going. I'm back in England again on Monday or something. So keep an eye on who my guests may be on Tuesday on the Sports Therapy Association podcast. Had a great one last night with Dr. Amy Bender, all about sleep. So fascinating. I can't wait to part two. Fantastic mind, fantastic researcher, sleep science for Cerebra in Calgary, Canada. I'll get that out as a podcast soon. Hopefully I'll do it while I'm on holiday and give you a chance to see that. Interesting for everybody, therapists, runners, anybody who sleeps, and probably all people who have problems sleeping, or anyone who's tired during the day. Right, I've rattled on and on. There we go, folks. Matt Phillips from Menorca on Runaday Day. If you're interested in the Runaday Day challenge, then the link is in the text below. Sign up maybe for August, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's what comes next, isn't it? Heat's getting to my head. Right, take care. Speak to you soon. Bye bye.